Welcome to episode 81 of the Mio on MMA podcast. Talking about UFC Vegas 69, UFC Andrade versus Blanchfield. And I am your host, Mio. I apologize if the quality of my voice is not great today. I had a bad morning. Something I ate just screwed me up all kinds of ways. And the morning and afternoon, really everything up until about 3 p.m. today was pretty monstrous. So filming this later than I usually do. It'll be up later than it usually is. And that's really all I have to add on to that. Also, having fun poking at Nate Marquardt and other religious people on Twitter. Because I find his stance against homosexuality, against apparently babies out of wedlock and all that just hilarious. There you go. So let's talk about this UFC fight card, which I said wasn't going to be very good. And to be honest, I stand by that statement. The main event was pretty cool. The Jim Miller versus Alexander Hernandez fight delivered. I thought they both would. Evan Elder versus Nazim Sadikov. That was pretty good. And Jamal Amers versus Kushain Ashkabov, pretty reasonable as well. Felipe Lin's got and AJ Fletcher got neat finishes, and Clayton Carpenter had a big win. Not a great night for me in terms of picks. I went, let's see here. Let me pop up the card here real quick. Also, by the way, MMA Decisions is down right now, so I'll be going off memory for the decisions. So if we look at the card, it was an 11 fight card. I got Pauga correct. I got Prachnio. I got Sadikov technically correct, but not really. I got Mauro Buenasilva. I got Felipe Lins, and I got AJ Fletcher. So I went 6-5 on picks. Was quite wrong on a couple of picks. Obviously, Aaron Blanchfield came through. Jamal Pokes came through. Although I think to be honest, my view of how that fight works in general didn't really change. I did think Jim Miller beat Alex Hernandez, but I don't have a problem with Hernandez getting the nod. The only thing I have a problem with is the 30-27 scorecards. I think those were incorrect. I think essentially that Miller won the third round. I think he came far closer to actually winning the fight there. He got the takedown, he got the rear naked choke, but we'll talk about that more in a bit. So let's talk about Aaron Blanchfield versus Jessica Andrade at the top of the card. The main event, the fight that we were actually pretty excited about. And I thought Blanchfield looked pretty good. She won the first round, obviously. She got the rear naked choke submission in the second round. She did her thing. I think her stand-up looked much improved. She was stringing things together in combination a lot more than she used to. I do think some of her ability here was a function of physicality, a function of reach. Jessica Andrade, of course, not even a particularly large reach for a strawweight, fighting at flyweight. There was always going to be that reach advantage, and Blanchfield used it. But that's the thing is, she hasn't historically been someone to use that. So it was good to see her have that range game. It was good to see her throw a little bit more volume. It was good to see her not get discouraged by a lack of takedowns, because for the first couple of takedown shots, Andrade did shut that shit down. So it was really a very, very good fight all around. And when she did get it down, she pounced with the lethality. She got the back, and she got the rear naked choke. She did a fantastic job. Secured herself probably a title shot if Valentina Shevchenko retains against Grasso. Because let's be honest, well, I mean, I guess you could still go with Tyler Santos. But I think the UFC has no intention of rolling back Tyler Santos in the main event because, well, they originally booked Santos here. So I guess the only dark mark against this fight is the fact that it was short notice for Jessica Andrade. So maybe she has a full camp. She has more time to prepare and get ready for the specific opponent. She'll do better. But at the same time, I've never really picked Andrade to be a super adaptive, planned fighter. Like how she fights tends to be against everyone fairly similar. So I'm pretty willing to give Blanchfield top marks for this. She's young. She's getting better. She's showing better skills. Pretty much every time out. I guess the lone exception to that would be the Aldrich fight. That was her lone kind of. If she was better, then Aldridge was still able to come up with answers for it and shut her down quite a bit. I mean, she did win that fight, obviously, but it was a fight in which she was put much more on the back foot and wasn't having her own way in a way we haven't really seen with anybody else, except I guess Tracy Cortez. So she's getting better. She's young. She's improving. She was not out-physicaled by Andrade. She went in the clinch, and yes, it was hard to get that takedown, but she got it. She got it done, and she got the fight done in the second round. Very, very impressive. And I always like to talk about who they should fight next. I told you Blanchfield already. It's basically a title shot unless Grasso beats Shevchenko, in which case they'll probably run it back, I would imagine. And in that case, I don't actually know where you'd go after that. Also, I'm noticing my OBS not actually recording any sound. That's lovely. All right. Well, I'll have to throw a video together. That's fine. We can make that happen. We can do things. Okay. It'll probably actually save time on the YouTube upload. But yeah, I don't have much more to add about that fight for Andrade. I personally think you just do the Thug Rose fight. Like, Andrade is in a point where she's between weight classes, and I don't think you can give her a strawweight title shot off this loss. You definitely can't give her a flyweight title shot off this loss. So what's the biggest thing you can do with her? What's the highest profile fight? What's the fight that sets people up? It's her versus Thug Rose, the grudge match, the third one, because they both have a win over each other. Let them throw down. And to be honest, I'm a little surprised that that idea hasn't been peddled yet. But, I mean, I know why it hasn't been made, obviously. Thug Rose hasn't been fighting regularly. She was in the title picture. You didn't really want to put her in a fight with Andrade while going through the title picture, while being champion. And, of course, since she's lost the belt, she has not fought. Am I forgetting a fight that Thug Rose has had since losing the belt? No. There's the Jillian Robertson grappling match, of course, but no, yeah, so yeah. I mean, I guess the downside of that is that it's been so long since we've seen Thug Rose fight a new opponent. Like, we're talking 2021 against Weili Zhang, which wound up being a rematch. We're talking Jessica Andrade in the 2019 fight, which wound up in a rematch. Again, in J-Check 2017. Last time she had a standalone fight was against Michelle Waterson Gomez back in 2017. So I guess you could argue we would like to see fresh blood against Rose, but that is the fight that to me actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm advocating for it. Zach Pauga basically slammed Jordan Wright into the fence and kept him there and held him there and played it safe. I get it. It's a first win in the UFC for Pauga. There are some concerns about your durability after you've been knocked out for the first time, even though I really didn't have them myself, because getting knocked out by Mo Usman versus getting knocked out by Jordan Wright are two really, really different things. I get why this fight was made to a certain degree. Like, it had high upside, and we're going to talk about a fight later on that had really loaded upside. This one had high upside, but it never turned into the crazy one-round awesome war that you generally expect with Jordan Wright. The reason Jordan Wright is still on contract is so that Jordan Wright can go out there and have destructive fights where he gets wild and crazy and tries to destroy things. And that did not happen here at all. So, disappointing. And it's a fight best avoided. I guess it doesn't really advance Pauga in any way, but it doesn't hurt him either, I guess. Anyways, for next fights, I got Pauga versus Marcin Prachnio, which is, I know, incredibly lazy because Prachnio fought on this card, but it was the only fight I could think of that really made sense. And for Jordan Wright, getting cut, like, I'm sorry, he's an exciting fighter. He's an interesting talent. People were like defending his inclusion on this card. They were defending his inclusion on the UFC roster quite heavily. But to me, I don't really think I don't think you can, like, if he never wins, if he never pulls off the upset victory, what are we doing here? And it was said by, I think, Terrence McKinney on Twitter, like, if a fight's exciting, what does it matter? It's because this is the UFC. We're tuning in to see high-level fights, impactful fights, world-appropriate fights. If we just want to see crazy finishes and exciting fights, you can go to a regional show. Like LFA, FAC, XWF, Titan, CFFC, Fury FC, Fusion Fighting Championship, Art of War. All of these promotions will provide you with, like, good fights. If that's all you're interested in. We're paying the UFC premium price for ESPN Plus, or if you're attending live, the price of a ticket, to see good fights. Or to see impactful fights that also happen to be good. Like, that's the perfect world. A good fight with stakes and with talent involved. And that was not this fight. And I don't think that is a Jordan Wright fight ever. Moving on to Zach Parisian versus Jamal Pogues. I do want to say credit to both of these guys. They both hurt themselves. Pogues broke his hand. I think Parisian ended up with some broken toes after he hit a front kick in the first round. His toes looked fucked up. And they kept going, and they kept going for the full 15 minutes. I would say that this fight just encapsulated their flaws, though, both of them. In Parisian's case, his big issue is that he does not have great takedown defense. Like, every time they got in close, Pogues was able to put him on his back quite easily. Like, he's actually, for a heavyweight, not a bad back grappler. Not bad at scrambling back up. Will actually threaten. He had a nice Kimura attempt in the second round, I do believe, where he grabbed a Kimura off a takedown and actually was making it work and used it to get a stand-up. He's got better grappling than you would expect looking at the man based on his size. But his style brings him into range for takedowns constantly, and he has no real ability to stop them. And Pogues utilized that. And in Pogues' case, I just think he's too inactive. He's not very high power striker. You know, he is a 205er, not a heavyweight. He does not have heavyweight power. And he does seem to know that. And it's just kind of weird that he has adapted a very low output, one for one, you go, I go type approach to the fight that leaves things very, very close. What was the numbers for this fight, actually? Kind of interested now. Parisian landed 37 to 33 significant strikes. So not very high on either side. But Parisian outlanded him 12-7 in the first round, 13-8, and then got outlanded 18-12. Pogues won the third round. I did give him the first round. I gave Parisian the second round. I did score 29-28. I just think that, and here's the thing, is also the strikes thrown here. He never threw more than 30 strikes in a round. For comparison purposes, Parisian threw 32, 49, and 56. So he's very inactive with his hands. And I'd love to see that more, because when he does throw, it's not bad. Like, he has good form. He varies up his target. He'll go to the body. He'll go to the legs. Like, there are some very good building block technical ideas. But it seems like he has no faith that he has the cardio to fight at a higher pace. And I think if he's going to fight at heavyweight long term, that has to change. Because at some point, the impact is going to get worse, and he's not going to be able to break it up with takedowns the way he was in this fight. So congratulations on the win, Jamal Pogues. But I kind of hope you treat this as a loss in terms of reflection and learning on it, which a lot of fighters don't. Like there is no reason, realistically, in a holistic approach to the game, that people need to lose to actually learn and develop and get better. Aaron Blanchfield is a perfect example of this, coming out after a win and looking better than ever before. I'm hoping Jamal Pose goes on that same journey because there is an athletic ability there. There is some coolness under fire there. There is a diverse skill set. There's some quick thinking even. But my guy, you have got to step up the volume and get things going because this ain't going to take you very far. That's the blunt of it. I have him against the loser of the Martin Budai Jake Collier fight. And for Parisian, I don't have anyone in the UFC. The fight that actually, I was looking through the rankings, and I happened to stumble across Steve Mowry, the Bellator 6'8" heavyweight with like good grappling. That actually is probably the most interesting fight on my mind for him. So like, it's kind of weird that like, honestly, it feels like, moving over to Bellator or having Mowry come over to the UFC is the best use of him, but that won't happen. I don't know who he's going to fight next. I'm not particularly interested either way. He's a proven ground guy. Like, he's a tough dude who will keep fighting, has, despite his carriage, a relatively high output, a relatively good gas tank. So he's definitely there to test younger guys, younger heavyweights that you kind of need to know something about. I just don't know who that'll be. Like, it'll probably be someone who wins on Dana White Contender Series, and we basically just get chapter 2 of Pogues and Parisian, just with someone else playing the role of Pogues. William Knight, Marcin Prachnio. This is a fight I want to talk about, and not for any good reason. This was terrible. What were the numbers on this fight? I need to know. It was 79-8 significant strikes landed in favor of Prachnio. And it's not because Prachnio put up an amazing performance of defensive awesomeness and high pace or really anything that changes my mind about him. It's just William Knight was unable to find a range he was comfortable engaging at. He was unable to close in. He was unable to cut the cage off. And he also got his legs absolutely bashed up, and to the point where there were points in the fight where it literally, I don't know how much this was actually needed, but it literally appeared he needed the fence to keep himself upright. And yeah, it was bad. But what was particularly interesting about this fight is Twitter seemed shocked by this, and tried to put this all on William Knight. Like, the man apparently has had death threats, people blaming him for their lost bets or whatever. Number one, here's the thing. If a fighter loses a bet for you, that's the least of their problems. So, like, vent on Twitter if you want or whatever. But like, PMing or tagging a fighter because they lost and you bet on them is incredibly lowbrow. Something that never ever should be done. I mean, this is fighting. You don't want to lose money on betting on MMA? Don't bet on MMA. There's your answer. But people are like, oh, he fought uninterested and all of these things. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. Realistically speaking, this was, even by William Knight standards, low output, no solutions to a problem fighting. It was bad. It was very bad. I am not defending William Knight in anything I'm going to say next. But you want to blame someone, you blame the matchmaker. They put Marcin Prachnio, who is a dedicated range striker, dedicated outside guy, which is pretty rare in the division. It's not common. And you ask William Knight, a guy who doesn't know how to close the distance and only looks good with fighters who are willing to do that for him, Alexa Kammer, or just have no way of imposing any will on the fight, like Fabiano Charant. I think that was his name, anyways. The African guy that he knocked out. Or guys like Alonzo Menafield, who are just used to people absolutely caving at their power. These are the only guys that William Knight looks good at with. I predicted Prachnio to win a decision. He did. I predicted it to be pretty boring. It exceeded my expectations in that regard. But I saw something similar to this. I didn't think we'd get 10-1 strike landing, but I thought that the only interesting bits of this fight would be if Prachnio was slow exiting the pocket. Because William Knight has no way to take a fight to him. It's a fight that shouldn't have been made, shouldn't have been on the main card. You want William Knight, because he's an impressive-looking male specimen, to be on your main card to attract eyeballs. Give him someone he can fight and have a good fight with. And it particularly did not help that Parisian Pogues was not amazing. I mean, for comparison purposes, they landed less significant strikes than Prachnio did between the two of them. And then we had Pauga versus Wright, which was quite bad. But basically, we got a good opening fight to the main card and a good main event. And that was it. And next up for the fighters, like I said, Prachnio versus Pauga. And William Knight will probably get cut, although Twitter really wants to see him fight Dom Reyes because they think that that would be the solution for Dom Reyes' current problems. Like a pure confidence-building fight for him. Maybe. But I also wouldn't be entirely surprised if Dom Reyes actually just got clocked and put down. Honestly, I just think he's a broken fighter, and what he needs is someone to get through to him. Jim Miller, Alexander Hernandez. This was a good fight. This was a really good fight, and I thought it was a positive experience for Hernandez, even though I had him losing. I had Miller winning the first and the third round. The first round, it was basically that both of them did stagger each other. But Miller had the bigger moment, swarming him, stunning him against the cage, putting some stuff in there. Both guys showed off like some nice kicking to the body, did some good things. But I just thought Miller did the better job. Now, if you gave that round to Hernandez, no problem. You gave it 29-28, fine with it. Second round, that was all Miller. Not all Miller, all Hernandez. Miller wears damage really, really badly. And Hernandez started to take over. He outlanded him. Wasn't particularly hurt by him at any point. And Hernandez also landed some very, very nice elbows every time they did get in close. Like Miller would come in and be like, and then boom, get hit by an elbow. It was very good. There was a lot of Miller hitting air. There was a lot of Hernandez hitting air, but we're used to Hernandez hitting air because he doesn't necessarily have the greatest gauge of range. But he was doing adaptations and finding new ways to work. And you know what? Has Alex Hernandez finally woken up and become the fighter that he probably at any point really could have been? Honestly. Third round was being won by Hernandez until the end. Miller got a good flurry, got the takedown, got the back control, got a very close rear naked choke, but Hernandez did survive. He was thinking don't fuck it up when he was in the choke. And he didn't. So he made it to the final bell. He got the W. Again, no problem with the 29-28 Hernandez. I don't think you give him the clean sweep, though. And two judges did. Who were the two judges that gave him the clean sweep? It was Rick Winter and Eric Colon. Judges I don't normally actually have the biggest problem with. That's disappointing. This was a good... Legitimately, this was a good fight for Hernandez, though. He showed resilience, adaptability, fight IQ that we have not seen from him before. He applied his physicality, and honestly, I applaud it. I am not a hater of Alex Hernandez in any way. I've said it. I want him to succeed. I want every fighter to succeed. It's just frustrating watching him fail to succeed so many times. Maybe he's finally done something here, and I'm interested to see what happens going forward. And it might be rushing him. It might be. But I don't think that there's any point in giving him like the low end of the lightweight division because he'll crush them and then he'll learn the wrong lessons. So I put him against Jamie Malarkey, and for Jim Miller, I've got Mateusz Rebecki. I think that would be an interesting fight of two guys who like to grapple. A lot of people avoid the ground with Miller, and I don't think Rebecki would. So let's make that fight happen. Nazim Sadikov versus Evan Elder. This was a good performance from Evan Elder. He was apparently up on all scorecards, 2-0 before the either knee opened up a cut or a clash of heads opened up a cut. I'm not sure which. The replays never gave me confidence to say which way it was because they did definitely have a head bonk and there was definitely a knee strike. Both of them could have done it. Got the job done. Anyways, It saved Sadikov from a loss. This fight was Elder being more active, Nazim being probably a little bit more clean. Like, I found his strikes to be just the cleaner of the bunch, but Elder was putting out the volume, the MMA meta of throw, throw, throw. And it's not like he didn't hurt him. He sat Sadikov down, I want to say twice. I'm looking at my thing. Yeah, he sat him down in the first round. And was there a second one here? I don't see it. Maybe there wasn't one, but I could have sworn that there was one. And Elder also got planted a little bit himself. But yeah, I thought that when the chaos started going in, he was doing a really good job. He was doing his thing. He was bringing it. Evan Elder looks like he has learned some legitimate good lessons. Like, between that and Alexander Hernandez, my mind is blown. My mind is blown. Elder was actually in good positions to receive offense this time. His fight with Preston Parsons, a lot of people kind of wrote it off as he was just too small to fight Parsons. It was just a strength thing, just a physicality thing. But the reality of it was every time Elder engaged, he put himself in bad positions, striking defensively and wrestling defensively. And while some of the striking is definitely still there, Sadikov was able to land at a pretty good clip, pretty good percentage. The fact that Elder was able to avoid just getting wrestle mopped was a big improvement. And he showed off his own takedown game, of course, which I knew he had. We'd seen it before. But it does feel like he's mating a wrestling and striking game closer together that actually functions with both. And I actually come out of this fight feeling quite good about him, even though he lost. For Sadikov, I don't hate it. I do think that a loss here would have been more useful for Sadikov, if we're being honest. The reason is, again, MMA fighters tend not to really be terribly reflective of what they did wrong in a loss. And he did a lot wrong here. Like, his problems are still very much here. He's not necessarily as high output as he probably needs to be. He's not that difficult to take down, although he is very good at getting to the fence and wall walking up. But he does have some significant problems with takedown defense, which is weird because, again, he's a Chris Weidman disciple. You would think he'd be very good about that. But he's not very good when he is actually forced onto the back foot. And a lot of fighters are going to do that to him in the UFC. For next fights, I have Sadikov versus Mason Jones, who's a bit of a broken prospect, and Evan Elder against Trey Ogden. Would be interested to see what Elder can do, putting physical advantages to play, and a bit of a blank canvas that is Trey Ogden. Lena Landsberg versus Mayra Buena Silva was just kind of sad. In no way could Landsberg compete with Silva. Even when she was able to force a clinch and do her thing, because she is the elbow queen, the elbows in the clinch, the ability to control things there. She just got out-hossed repetitively in the clinch. Buena Silva was able to take her down when she wanted to focus on it. Eventually finished with a pretty slick knee bar. So, good performance from Mayra Buena Silva. A lot of what she usually does. I kind of had a hard time envisioning this fight just because I had a hard time thinking about like what Landsberg would bring to the table to actually keep things close. Turns out I was right about that. But I also just think of Buena Silva as like too much of an opportunist to define a fight, which is wrong. She did a good job here. She kicked the legs well. She kicked the body well. Diversified her offense. Did just a better job. So again, this was a night of fighters actually impressing me and taking steps forward. And that made me happy, even if the fights themselves didn't. For Mayra Buena Silva, I have next up Paniki Andrade. Andrade's kind of a better version of Landsberg. They fought each other twice, obviously. It'd be interesting to see how much better she does against her. Landsberg's 40 years old. I would like to see her retire because I don't think the sport has anything really for her. But we'll see. Jamal Emmer showed Kushin Ashkabov what happens when you fight like an idiot against somebody who has similar physicality levels to you. Because the issue with Ashkabov, and I was talking with some people on Twitter about this, is it's not that he's never felt pushback or trouble in a fight, because he often has. It's that he's taken the lesson from every time he's been in trouble in a fight. I can just keep doing the same thing and it'll be fine. I'll go out there, I'll keep doing the dumb things that got me in trouble the first time, and I'll survive. I'll be fine. I'll do my thing. And obviously, you can't do that at a UFC level. So when he was throwing dumb spinny stuff or inefficient strikes or shooting from his knees for takedowns, Emmers shut it down. Put him on his back a little bit as well, kicked his legs a lot, kicked the body a lot, and had a comprehensive game plan that I knew he was going to have. I just thought that Ashkabov training with ATT and Tiger Muay Thai would have a second game that I hadn't seen, I guess, in a nutshell. That you're training with two very serious camps. There is no way that they would let you go out there with the game you had shown on the regional scene at a UFC level. They would have beaten it into you that you need to be less risk or more risk averse, that you need to be more efficient, that you need to actually put some stuff together. And no, apparently that's not the case. Big win for Emmers. First loss for Ashkabov. Hopefully he comes back with a better game, because I'll be honest here. I totally think that the building blocks of that, he is a stud athlete. That's the thing I need to keep putting up here. This guy can be a top-notch UFC fighter. He's not Jason Reinhardt or something. But he does need to take it to heart that, you know what? You actually have to respect the other guy. You actually have to fight with a cohesive strategy to make things happen. And for next fights, I've got Emmers versus the winner of Daniel Pineda and Tucker Lutz. I've got Ashkabov versus Daniel Argueta, who has just enough physical ability to make him work, but has a limited game that does offer him options and the sort of guy that he should beat. He also gassed himself out in this fight. Ovid St. Preux got stormed by Felipe Lins. I've got Felipe Lins versus Carlos Ulberg. I've got OSP. Give him a retirement fight. Give him the Shogun send-off moment against somebody he can beat, because he has done the UFC a solid. This is a guy who's taken short notice fights. This is a guy who has, every time they've knocked on his door, he's been there. He's been ready through cancellations of opponents and stuff. And he's honestly the walking embodiment of the idea that if you pay the fighters more money, they'll get not hungry. OSP has stayed hungry despite a six-figure contract and willing to take stuff. So, give him a proper send-off. I've never been the biggest fan. I have, and Byron's listening to this. I know you haven't been, but let him go out there, give him a pay-per-view slot to kind of say goodbye, and hopefully that's the deal. AJ Fletcher took to the second round to get Themba Garimbo out of there. He did really well in the first round. Garimbo does have super nice back takes. I will say that. He is a slithery snake, but he also did very, very little with it. And he immediately went for grappling exchanges with Fletcher despite the massive reach advantage he had and the success he was having, because he was kicking the legs and kicking the body kind of well. And it didn't really seem like Fletcher necessarily had shown what he had as a solution for that. And then Garimbo was like, we're going to go to the ground and I'm going to take you back. And that's cool, but he didn't finish it. He got out scrambled and then kind of got lucky. Fletcher had mount position and he overswung on a ground and pound, which allowed Garimbo to grab a leg and try and go for a leg lock. It was a bad idea that he didn't use that to stand up with, as opposed to trying to go for it, though, because it was clear he wasn't really going to get it. You're grappling with a Tim Crater schooled fighter. That's a bad plan. Second round, terrible takedown attempt by Garimbo. AJ looking for top control. He actually fails on that. He does get out scrambled by Garimbo. That was his best moment of scrambling. But he's into a guillotine choke. He survives. He kind of has half back mount, if you know what I mean. One hook in. And then they end up getting scrambling back to the feet. Big club and sub elbow from AJ, who locks up the guillotine, gets the victory. AJ Fletcher has his first win in the UFC. I still think that there's a hard ceiling for him because, honestly, he has super short arms. He's not very tall for the weight class to begin with. And that's really all I got to say on it, really. But Garimbo is not very good. There are individually good things about Garimbo's game. Like I said, the back takes, the kicking's not too bad. But he also looks like a guy who is terrified being in there, not comfortable at all, and comes from a regional scene where that game was enough to get things done. It's not going to be at the UFC level. And I don't have anything for him because he's not UFC caliber. For Fletcher, I've got the winner of Johan Leonis versus Mike Malott, Battle of the Canadians. I think both of those would be good fights. Even though they are guys who technically have had more success than him, I think they are honestly about the same level. Juan Camilo Ronderos versus Clayton Carpenter. Clayton Carpenter still is absolutely messy and nuts, and Ronderos got the early takedown. I expected that. He was doing some things, but Carpenter's got an active guard, looking for an armbar, looking for a triangle. At various points, he had both of them. Ronderos managed to get out of it, but he ended up losing top position off of the deal. Carpenter scrambled to the back, got the rear naked choke. Good win, good find. I still think that he has all the physical abilities, but he is also incredibly hard capped because he has no structure to his game. And he gets a win over Ronderos here. Next up for him, I've got the road to UFC winner, Hong Sang Park. And for Ronderos, I have Shannon Ross in a battle of two dudes that I honestly think are not remotely UFC caliber and don't really test people all that well. So make that happen. To that end, everybody, I'm not going to go too long on the outro today. But to below, above, to the left, or the right, you will find a pile of links to my link tree, to my YouTubes, to my other places the podcast lives, Twitch, etc. If you're into nerdy gaming and you're into mixed martial arts, check it out. I assume you're into mixed martial arts if you're here. Check out the Discord channel, our server, because the Discord server has the MMA simulator in it, which I think if you are nerdy and you're into fights, you will enjoy. And I think that's my target audience here. So there you go. I will talk to you guys on Thursday. If you're not tuning in to the Tuesday night Gronk Baseball League.